Meantime, in Syria, ISIS militants have stormed 2 villages in northern Iraq, kidnapping more than 70 Syrian Christians. Excuse me, this was actually in northern Syria. This is coming to us from human rights groups in this area. And while hundreds were able to run for their lives, dozens were captured. And among them, we're talking about women, children, and the elderly, innocent civilians here. This comes as CNN has learned the U.S. has now spent millions of dollars shipping more weapons to Iraq. Weapons including 10,000 M16 rifles that will likely be used in the battle to take back the Iraqi city of Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, which is now an ISIS stronghold. Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, retired U.S. Army Special Forces, is joining me, and I want to talk to you about the fight for Mosul in just a moment. But first, let's talk with Ben Wiedemann, our CNN senior international correspondent currently in Erbil. And Ben, these Syrian Christians have occupied this land for centuries. What are you learning about the fate of these kidnapped Christians and why ISIS targeted them anyway?
Yeah, Anna, we understand from the Syrian Human Rights Network that at around 4 o'clock this morning, local time, an ISIS force approached these 2 villages in Hasakeh province in northeastern Syria. Now, the village was very lightly guarded. They were able to overcome the guards and break into homes, dragging away, according to this Human Rights Network, between 70 and 100 people, mostly women, children, and the elderly. In addition to that, around 700 families fled that area and went to the city of Hasakeh, where they're currently taking refuge in a church. Now, we understand that from another organization, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, that before this attack took place, people overheard on radios ISIS fighters discussing capturing what they called crusaders, which is what ISIS calls essentially all Christians in this case. Now, it's important to keep in mind that recently Kurdish fighters in northern Syria were able to retake the city of Kobani, and they have been pushing ISIS further and further back, retaking territory ISIS had occupied during the summer. And this may be ISIS simply opening up a new front to relieve the pressure in other parts of Syria. Anna?
All right, Ben Wiedemann, thanks for your reporting. Now, Colonel, we saw what happened after the killing of the Jordanian pilot, also the beheading of the Egyptian Christians. We've seen a huge response from Arab nations. Do you expect to see a similar response to this incident?
Well, I don't know that you're going to see the same response. I mean, Syria is already, pushing back against ISIS in this, and so I don't think that you'll probably see that much of an increased response with the kidnapping of Syrian Christians. I do think, however, that what they're doing by kidnapping these Christians and persecuting Yazidis and others is just part of their larger narrative to demonstrate that they really are manufacturing a crusade here. I mean, that's what they're after.
And listen to what Republican Senator Jeff Sessions said earlier, and then we'll talk on the other side.
We need to work with the Iraqi Army. It's not incapable of action. It can take action. And we need to help them move on the offensive and take back territory and remove the momentum that ISIS has obtained and maybe get this effort blunted. I think that's very doable.
So when we talk about ISIS's plan to have this caliphate, to take over these large swaths of territory, and you mentioned that this latest incident is just one more example, yet Iraq is still dealing with its own situation there. We know that they abandoned their positions, dropped weapons, ran away when ISIS first arrived there. So with sending more military might, are you confident that the Iraqi army can then rise to the challenge in that country?
Well, they've certainly got their work cut out for them in that, Anna. I mean, this military is pretty nascent. It's pretty new. And, it's going to take a lot of work to get them ready for that. I think what I'm more concerned about, though, and a lot of the folks at the nonprofit Stability Institute that I run, what we're concerned about is this narrative or this tension between the Shia and the Sunni areas of Mosul. Because what really this is starting to shape up to be, and I think ISIS wants, is this perceived Shia assault on Mosul. So the Iraqi military, the Shia militias, that's what's going to make it very difficult for the Iraqi military to achieve any success here.
And so it goes back to the heart of the initial problem, which is the clashing internally with the different religious factions and even tribal factions in that area. I mean, how do you break through with that?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is we have to look at what is it that, what's the narrative that these guys are trying to spin, and what are they trying to draw us into here? I mean, taking back Mosul is important, but how we take back Mosul, I think, is extremely important as well. And if the Sunni-dominated areas around Mosul perceive the Iraqi military coming against them as a Shia-dominated military, then you're going to have folks entering into the fray that are not even ideologically ISIS. They just see this as a Shia onslaught against Mosul. So we've just got to be careful that we don't get drawn into a sectarian fight between Shias and Sunnis that we're not ready to manage. We're going to have to deal with Mosul, but again, how we do it is going to take some work, and we need to be careful not to get drawn into their narrative in the process.
All right, Colonel Scott Mann, our thanks to you.